So let's talk about the speakers first. This is a speaker that I used on the handheld game console, and as you can see, it's nice and small and thin, and the surround on the speaker is below the frame, so I could just glue it directly to the surface. That's not the case with the speakers that I'm using on the arcade box. As you can see, the surround is above the frame of the speaker, so I had to create a couple of I guess brackets, if you'll call them that will allow me to mount the brackets to the faceplate and then mount the speakers to the brackets. So this is just some 3/16 or 1/4 inch cherry that I made. These are 2x2 squares, and this is an 1.5 inch hole. And I had to chamfer the corners and remove some of the waste off of the top because the speaker, or the screen rather, will go really close to the speaker grill. So I needed to remove some of the waste off of this. So I've got everything drawn up for the location of the screen, and this is where it's going to go. I got some reference lines, so I know exactly how much room I have to work with the speakers, and that's pretty close to where this screen's going to go, give or take, you know, a 32nd of an inch. To glue the brackets down, I'm just going to use a little bit of CA glue in the corners just to get it into place so it won't move, and then I'm going to follow that up with some hot glue, and that will hold it down pretty well. So I'm just going to put it a few dabs. I put too much on there, which I often do, but as long as it stays away from the speaker holes. And then I'm just going to center this bracket on the holes from the speaker grill. It doesn't have to be perfect, just make sure that it's not covering any of these holes. And I also want to make sure that I've got enough room on the top of the screen, which I do. Now we're going to move on to installing some trim pieces on the left side and the top of the screen just to hold it into place and make sure that it's square to the frame. I've got this left side double taped down so that when I flipped it over, I made sure that there wasn't any gray area from the frame being seen from the front side of the face. Because now, once this dries, I'll come back with some hot glue to glue that into place permanently. To install the speakers, I'm just going to use some hot glue and go around the rim of the speaker, making sure not to get any on the inside of the speaker. And you probably guessed it, I'm also going to use the hot glue on the screen. But first, I'm going to double check one more time. There's no frame showing on the other side. Let me take a couple of minutes to chat about the internals of this arcade and some of the struggles that I ran into while putting all of this together. To begin with, the Raspberry Pi is a Raspberry Pi 3 Model B version 2. I've got that connected to a 40-pin HDMI DVI decoder board from Adafruit. And for the audio, I've got a 2-channel, 3 watts per channel amplifier that I have powered via the Raspberry Pi's GPIO. And I'm also powering the 40-pin decoder board with the GPIO ports as well. Now to run everything, I've got a 1000C charger board from Adafruit and a 4400 milliamp hour battery that will hopefully run this for a good amount of time, maybe an hour. I've not used this yet, so I'm not sure with this setup. Now here's a little power button that I have that I still need to solder into place with these wires right here. Now for the, let me back up and show you this. On the back of the arcade box, I've got a USB port on both sides for 2 controllers, and this micro USB charger port that I've hardwired to the 1000C board. Now I did have to make my own USB cables because I couldn't find anything the correct length, and plus they were too bulky, so I had to make my own USB cables. Again, that wasn't fun. There was a lot of soldering and a lot of trial and error, but they're done. I've got them in place, and I'm holding these into place with some hot glue as well as the micro USB port. Now to mount everything to the inside, I went ahead, since I'm only using a 1/4-inch top panel, I went ahead and glued another 3/16 panel to the back side of the 1/4-inch panel, that's the lid. And I've mounted everything using some M3 6mm screws. And to drill those, I just had a 2mm bit and an M3 tap, so that way everything is threaded real properly and I can mount the board directly to the board on the inside of the lid. Again, those are just using some M3 6mm screws on the corners. Now, as far as the display is concerned, I've got a 7-inch LCD panel that's right here. I've got it taped off because I'm getting ready to apply some finish. The power button goes right here in the center, and then these are the little holes for the audio to come through. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I wanted to briefly talk about a few things that I would change on this box. And the first thing is this little piece of wood. And this piece of wood is required to use this box because unfortunately, it's too heavy. And if I let it go, it'll fall backwards. And I just didn't think about the weight of the components and the extra panels and the corner posts when making this. It's just something that I overlooked. So you got to have this little piece of wood to put behind the screen so it doesn't fall over. Granted, this is a version 1 of a prototype that I've never made before. There are going to be issues. The next version, what I'll do is probably put the components in the bottom, and that way the only thing up here would be the screen and these panels. That would probably save and add a little bit of weight to the bottom and prevent it from flipping over. Now, another thing that I did that I'm not sure why I did, I made these walls too thick. I made them 5/8 of an inch thick, and for a box this size, it's just a little too chunky for my taste. The next one I make, I'll probably go back to the 1/2 of an inch thickness, just again to save on weight, because if you were to pick this up, you could knock somebody out with this thing. It's pretty heavy. Now, on the back, another thing that I won't be having in the next version of this is these little USB ports. I will be using some Bluetooth controller for the next iteration of the arcade box, and that'll save me a whole lot of time because I made these USB ports by hand. And again, a lot of soldering and a lot of wasted effort because I could have just used Bluetooth. Now, I will keep this little USB port in the center because that's how I charge the 4400 milliamp hour battery. Now, to transfer games to this, the Raspberry Pi does have onboard Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, so I can SSH into the Raspberry Pi to transfer anything, and I can use a Bluetooth keyboard to make any changes to any configuration settings and stuff like that. You don't necessarily need to have USB ports to connect to it once it's inside of this box. Now, another thing I would like to find a resource for are some 4x3 screens that are not going to cost me an arm and a leg. Obviously, a 16:9, it's not the best kind of screen to use for retro arcade games like NBA Jam and whatnot that were made in the 90s because, they were made for 4x3 screens, so you don't have big black bars on the sides. But again, these were $35 on Adafruit, so, I just went with that. The power button is something else that I would love to find another source for. I would have liked to have gotten this in brass to match the screws, but I was rushing it to get it done, and I couldn't find a good source for that. So next time I will look for a better source for power buttons. And plus the thing is this long. I'm not sure why they made those that long, but again, it worked, and I'm happy with it. The hinges are the Brusso 95-degree hinges. I'm pretty happy with those, and plus they look great. They're nice, positive stop hinges. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it, and I brought out some of the other arcade boxes that I've made over the past couple of years, starting with this retro arcade box here, 10-inch screen. It's got this retro look to it. It's a mahogany veneer, and it looks really awesome in my opinion. It's got a little door in the back so you can access all the components, and plus it's got a remote that you can turn it off and on. Pretty awesome device. Plus, this is my little handheld that I made. It's got a 4.3-inch screen, maybe a 5-inch screen. This was a blast to make. A lot of work because I used dowel rods for mounting these little buttons here. A whole lot of work. But all of these came out awesome. This one I learned a lot on, and if someone breaks into the house, I could use this to knock them out with because it's extremely heavy and really sturdy. But I learned a lot from this, and look forward to some more projects like this in 2019. I got some stuff lined up that I think that you're going to enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed watching this build video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next build video.